came as a shocker, a big surprise, because the market was expecting a positive number, and indeed Stats SA releasing the figures this morning indicating that the economy actually contracted by 0.3% in the third quarter. And of course, agriculture was the main contributor to that decline, down by around 28%. And of course, you had government also that also is not putting much in terms of economic activity, also recording a decline. But for more, we are now joined by the Statistician-General Risenga Maluleke, just to give us a context in terms of these third quarter numbers. 0.3%. What was the main contributor to this negative decline? Just give us a context.
Tshepo, you are talking about a shocker. We make numbers available at Stats SA, and we do not worry about the emotions that are attached to that. And indeed, let us look at what was speculated in the markets. It's because the marketeers as well as economists and speculators didn't have the data from agriculture. And indeed, when you factor in the data that came in from agriculture, which is a negative growth, 28.8%, but it's not only the contraction that we look at in agriculture. We also look at its contribution to the entire quarter. So you can see that there are other sectors or other industries that grew in the positive and contributed in the positive, but a contribution of negative 0.7 of a percentage point sent the economy contracting for the third quarter.
If you have to paint a picture in terms of our economic activity, we know we want growth. We really depend on it in order to create jobs and deal with other issues that we are confronting. How would you summarize the current situation where our economy is at the moment, given today's numbers?
Well, let us look way back, and I want us to go back a bit to about your 2006, 2007. That is when we had the highest growth, sitting at 5.6%. After that, a global economic meltdown of 2008, and in 2009 we contracted. And after 2009, the economy only grew the highest in 2011 at 3.2%. After that, we went straight into COVID. We contracted by 6%, and 2021, we rose by 4.7%, but that growth was an aberration because we were coming from a very low base. But otherwise, if you look at successive years and quarters, we haven't been growing much. Actually, between 2023, third quarter, and now, we haven't grown much. So when you see an economy that is growing at 0.1%, 0.4%, it's not as much, and it's easy. And in this particular case, when agriculture weighs heavily for it to go on a slump. And you raise an issue about the challenge of the economy, or the issues in the economy, not necessarily the challenge, because for us, we have to report as it is. But one of the issues you are raising is that when you see an economy that is not growing, it's not likely to create sufficient jobs.
Households are quite key in terms of economic activity. We've seen some kind of improvement, but it's not much. Just paint us a picture for us in terms of how are the household consumption expenditure doing or performed in the third quarter?
Of course, one of the things we should look at when you look at household expenditure, one is that the economy has to produce some goods, but you also have to have prices that are not biting too much on households. And one of the things we have been seeing on the CPI is that the CPI has been going down, and as it goes down, it allows households to spend. But in this quarter particularly, we can see that it was more in recreation and cultural activities. And the biggest contribution there is the betting, sport betting, and all other activities of gambling, but particularly sport betting. We're seeing it taking a larger chunk of a household expenditure. And in this regard, particularly in that recreation and cultural activities, that's where it is.
Government, if you look back, has been quite a mainstay in terms of consumption and expenditure, and we're seeing that kind of being unwinded in terms of their role in the economy. Just paint a picture for us.
Let us start with the fact that in the past, before we moved education and health, the structure of our economy was that government came second, following finance, real estate, and business services. Now you can see that it's the second one now is personal services. Having said so, fast forward, go to COVID, government is the one that sustained our economy, because both from the production and consumption side, it contributed positively. But what we are seeing now, largely due to issues of employment, where the government is cutting down on employment, then it does affect the contribution of government.
Lastly, gross fixed capital formation, investment by both government and the private sector. That we've seen some improvement, but I think we still have a way to go. Because obviously we currently have public-private partnership in terms of infrastructure projects and so forth. How is that one doing?
Investments have been depressed for quite some time. Actually, if you look from the third quarter of 2023, where they slumped 4.7% and went again on a contraction 0.2%, and of course were followed by two other quarters, particularly this year, first and second quarter contracted. So this is the first time we see gross fixed capital formations recovering. We are yet to see how they will sustain going forward.
Thank you very much. That's the Statistician-General of South Africa, Mr. Risenga Maluleke, of course. Still a mixed picture in terms of how the economy is doing. There are some pockets of good economic activity, but there are areas that are not doing well. Out of 10 sectors, 4 recorded a decline. And whether this will give us a positive overall 2024 good number of over 1%, that can still be debated. With that, it's back to you in studio.